So I was stationed at the Naval Air Base in Marietta, Georgia. All 4 branches of military had a presence at that air base. And it's typically a reservist base, but they had to have full-time support people there to take care of the aircraft. So I was on night shift. It's about 8 o'clock. I walked into maintenance control. Maintenance control is the brains of the control center that sends all these different shops out to work on aircraft. And there was a window, and I walked in the back door, came to the front, and the gunny from Quality Assurance. Quality Assurance is in charge of checking. They do a final check of anything that is flight control related. So he walks to the window and says, "Sergeant, come here a second." I said, "Yeah, gunny." He said, "I need you to sign off on this VISMAP." Okay, a VISMAP is a work order. I need you to sign off on this work order. There was a control rod that had to be adjusted, and I checked it, and I just need you to sign it saying that you worked on it. I said, "Well, who worked on it?" He said, "Well, this other sergeant worked on it, but he's gone." And I said, "Well, I need to go out and check to make sure that the panel and everything's put on." He goes, "No, I've already done that. The control rod is together, the panel's on, it's all good to go. I just need you to sign it. I got to get home." Well, I had been there for about a year, and I didn't want to start off on the wrong foot by upsetting the gunny from QA, so I signed off on it. After that, they sent me out to do a daily turnaround on the aircraft. What that is you inspect the aircraft from nose to tail to check to make sure everything's ready to go. Well, typically where that flight control is, it's underneath the tail of the aircraft, and those panels usually don't come off. He had just told me that he made sure that the panel was on and all the screws were in. So when I did my inspection, I ran my hand around to see if all the screws were there. It felt like the screws were there to me. So I kept on going. Signed off on the daily turnaround. Pilots came down and took it for a flight. A couple hours later, they came back and they landed. I landed them, got the aircraft tied down. Avionics was there that works on the wiring and electrical systems. And then another guy was there. Pilots jump out, and they said, "Sir, do you have a good flight?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "But my UHF radio went out about 10 minutes after we started flying." So the avionics guy jumped up there and he looked at the radio and says, "Well, everything seems to be working fine here." So he went to the back and looked underneath the tail, and the panel that was supposedly all the screws were put in it was missing. Now that panel holds a radar piece where you send a signal to that aircraft, and that little panel or that little radar piece receives it and sends it to the cockpit, unscrambles it so that they can hear what you're saying. Well, that piece was missing. There was just a wire dangling down. So there was no reports of anybody being hurt, the panel coming off and hitting somebody in the head. Everything was fine. Well, the next day I came in and they said, "You need to go up to QA. They want to talk to you." So the guy that originally put the panel on or worked on the job, my non-commissioned officer in charge, and me went up to the office. They put me at attention and they started grilling me. "Why didn't you check that panel? Why did you fail to put those screws in?" I said, I didn't do the job. This other sergeant did the job. The gunny came in and asked me to sign off on the VISMAP. The gunny said, "No, I didn't. I told you need to go out and inspect that panel to make sure that the screws were back in and then sign off on it." So, okay, so you understand what's going on now. I tried to defend myself the best I could, but voices got raised, and finally they said, "No, you're responsible because your name is on that VISMAP." I said, but the gunny inspector, he goes, I'm not talking about the gunny right now, I'm talking about you. I said, you're dismissed, we'll contact you and let you know what's going to happen. A couple of days later, they came down and said I was going to go to office hours. Office hours is sort of like going to court, like a traffic court, or if I stole something, I'd go to court, you know, in front of the judge. A few weeks later, I went upstairs to office hours. And by then, I understood what was going on. The gunny had been there 15 years. Everybody liked the gunny. I had been there a year. He was a gunnery sergeant with 15 years. I was a sergeant with 8 years. They figured they'd blame it on me. Now, let me explain. I'm not without guilt here. I should have gone underneath that aircraft and checked, made sure those screws were in there. I accept that part of it. But I should not have been the only one to get in trouble, in my opinion. So, officers came, CO said things like, you know, everybody has responsibilities. I have responsibilities. I have hundreds of papers come for my, you know, on my desk, and I don't just sign off on them and let them go. I've got to read each and every one. What you did was, you know, dereliction of your duty. You should have checked that panel. By then, I knew that I could not win. So I just kind of accepted it, and I did the only thing I could do is say, yes, sir, I screwed up. I didn't do the job properly. It won't ever happen again, and I apologize. So he said, well, okay, your punishment is going to be, you're going to be reduced in rank from sergeant to corporal. $100 taken out of your pay for the next 3 pay periods, and 30 days of you're going to have 30 days on probation, which means if I got in any trouble, I'd get more heaped on top of that. And then he sat there for a second. I was like, okay, why is he sitting here for a second? He says, but you know what? I'm going to suspend reducing you in rank to corporal. You're going to keep being a sergeant, but in the next 30 days, if you screw up one little bit, that's instantaneous. You're going to be a corporal. Okay, so now I have come to a crossroads. Well, okay, before we get to that, after it was all over, you know, I passed by the AMO's office, and the gunny was in there, and the AMO was in there, and a couple of other staff NCOs were in there, and they were just laughing it up, having a good time. You know, they were enjoying themselves. They were enjoying the fact that they had ruined my career. Now, I don't understand why people would do that. That's just pure evil, in my opinion. So I came to a crossroads. Here's the crossroads. One road, I could have become the biggest piece of crap, caused trouble, had an attitude, showed up late, just anything and everything. Or I could go down the other road, which is to prove them wrong. The lesson here is I went down the prove them wrong road. So what I did then was, since I screwed up on the daily and turnaround, you had to study and you had to take a test. I had to retake the test. I passed it. We had 2 what's called collateral duty inspectors, which are people that go out and inspect. When let's say I work on something, I have to get a CDI to come out and take a look at it to make sure that the safety wires have been put on or cotter keys are put on. Just make sure that the job is done correctly. We had 2. We had no CDIs for the UH-1Ns, which was the Hueys. So I became a CDI for 4 models of aircraft: AH-1S, AH-1J, AH-1T, and UH-1N. I went to, they sent me with a crew to the deployment, and I was able to keep the aircraft together and keep them running when we had a lot of things go wrong. I came up with some innovative ways to keep the aircraft running, keep them flying, so that we could get the mission complete. I took on extra duties that were in the flight line, like tool control, foreign object damage control. We had a wing inspection, and I took on the hardest program, and the guy that inspected said he couldn't believe how great the program was. He said it was just, he had never seen this program kept up the way I had kept it up. Well, what ended up happening is it worked. I impressed the aircraft maintenance officer. He saw that as, you know, he could have had an attitude. He could have become a problem. But no, he didn't. He excelled. He went over and above what every other Marine in Flightline has done. There was one other guy that had four. There was a collateral duty inspector for 4 aircraft. The guy that worked on the job that I got blamed for wasn't a CDI at all. Was a problem for the Flightline. I was able to take command of Marines and go and do a successful deployment, and I took on other jobs in the Flightline to to make the Flightline that much better. So again, am I telling you this because I'm a great person or I've done great things? No, I'm doing this, I'm telling you this as a life lesson. Even though you know that you were wronged, even though either job or life, you have been wronged in some way, take the high road. Go over and above to prove to them or her or whoever that they made a mistake. And like I said, they realize that. So typically as a sergeant, you get these things called fitness reports every year. Well, since I went to office hours, that fitness report was supposed to be a bad one. You know, all my marks were low. You know, he'd screwed this up and screwed that up. The AMO was so impressed with what I did that he gave me a good fitness report. I was put up for staff sergeant that very next year, and I got it. I got staff sergeant. So my career was saved by doing the high road. And I was able to finish out my 20 years in the Marine Corps by going out over and above what I was supposed to do and not taking the low road. Come to find out, a couple of years afterwards, they reviewed my record and found that I had gone to office hours and I did not get a disparaging fitness report. So they went back to the officer that did the fitness report and said, look, what are you doing here? This guy was supposed to get a bad fitness report. So he had to redo the fitness report, but he did it in a way where, you know, he talked to them and said, look, this guy was kind of railroaded, and his career's worth saving. How can I go about doing this fitness report without damaging his career? And they told him how to do it, and he did it that way. So that's my darkest hour. But I turned that darkest hour into probably the brightest day. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. Until my next video, I want to wish you and your family happy piping.